Welcome to the Tyneside Irish Cultural Society podcast with me, Michael McNally. 2021. Happy New Year, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast. Well, I think we were all hoping that this year was going to be a bit different to most of last year. However, it's Groundhog Day, and here we are in lockdown. Let's just hope the vaccine rollout is going to have a positive impact for everyone, and we hope that soon we'll all be back together, cuddling the people we care about. I think that's what I'm missing the most. Now, there's an awful lot of creative talent in the Northeast, particularly amongst the Tyneside Irish community, both musical and dance. And it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first guest of 2021. From a magnificent band with a tremendous history, the mighty Doonans. Please welcome Kevin Doonan.
I've been very well, thanks. Indeed, Michael. It's been strange times, but it's been strange times for everybody.
You grew up in an amazingly talented family, and I remember as a kid actually, seeing your dad perform with you. I'm sure you were there. I'm only 30 now, but it was quite a few years back, and I remember my dad saying to me, that your dad was an absolute legend and a world champion. Just tell us about what it was like growing up in your house.
It's strange, actually. We just kind of took it all for granted. The comings and goings of various people in the family. But also what we hadn't realised until much later was just how Irish the family was. And not just our family, but lots of other families in Hebron and Jarrow. And we used to do things that, you now associate typically with kind of Catholic families, where you'd all sit at, you would go to bed and you'd all kneel down at the bottom of the bed and you'd kind of pray there saying, God bless Grandad, God bless, all that kind of stuff. And it was something that you realised later, you just thought that was normal, but in fact you realised it was a sort of an Irishness input rather than just a straightforward English Catholic family. But of course, what you've got to remember as well is that certainly around about the 1920s and 30s, Hebron was known as actually Little Ireland. And there was a lovely little book which was written about Little Ireland, talking about Hebron. And the families who were in there, particularly in kind of Ellison Street and those kind of areas, there would be what my mum and dad would call a hoolie, where they would invite, just like the members of the family, local friends would all come to the house, and they would all sing the party piece. They would always play their party tune. Inevitably, you'd have people like my dad doing a couple of tunes on the piccolo, and that was stuff that we just found to be normal. Of course, when we get to the the 1960s, when myself and Michael started to think, that maybe there's more to music than just rock and roll. And maybe there's something in this kind of Irish music. We had our own folk club, which was set up in the late 60s. People like Dave Swarbrick and Martin Carthy, playing at the club and staying at my mum and dad's. And in just hearing them play in the house, in I'll always remember there was one lovely moment when my dad was teaching Dave Swarbrick a couple of tunes. There was a sequence of tunes. There was a slipjig called Sport the Chase, a reel called Rakish Paddy and Toss of Feathers. And I think there was another tune as well. And that was at the time when Martin Carthy and Dave Swarbrick were like at the top of their game. But they split up, and Dave Swarbrick went on to join Fairport Convention. And the first album they did with Dave Swarbrick, that little sequence of tunes appeared, in one of the tracks. And I was thinking to myself, I remember when you taught them those tunes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. It must have been, I know, because obviously similar sort of family, musical and everything else, and having that atmosphere in the house, but having those kind of visitors and you're taking it for granted and not really appreciating at the time how amazing these people are. You had loads of quite famous people stay in your house, didn't you, over the years? Did you realise at the time how important and significant they were?
No, they at the time, you've got to remember, this is at the time of the growth in folk music. And they, of course, were kind of coming of age, themselves really, as people. I mean, they were all young blokes at that time. They were all in the, kind of early to mid-20s. Particularly the Irish crowd would stay at my mum and dad's. If they did a gig locally, or they did a booking at the Viking Folk Club. So you'd have people like the Furies staying, you'd have Martin Carthy, Barbara Dixon, Billy Connolly did a gig at the Viking, Jerry Rafferty. And all of these people, were always extremely kind. They always loved my mother, because my mother would make sure that, there was always a hot meal there ready for them. Breakfast was always great to send them off on the way. And I'll always remember Christy Moore, and I guess he did this all over the country. I'm sure it wasn't particularly for my mum, but he always made a point of, maybe the gig was on a Friday night, on the Saturday morning he would go out, buy some flowers and a box of chocolates and bring them back for my mum. They are, Julie, thank you very much for putting us up for the night. Oh, and I remember something else as well. In the Chieftains, they didn't stay at the house, but they did a gig at, I think it was the Guildhall in Newcastle. And they all piled back to my mum and dad's house. I remember the harpist, Derek Bell, with the Chieftains. I distinctly remember him sat on my mum and dad's stairs playing Happy Birthday in real-time jig time and then in proper time as well, because it was somebody's birthday, and he could, because he's a clever bugger.
Oh, hi. Definitely. Now, I keep seeing little glimpses of Catch Things About Rosie, or, some of the other younger ones. And just this last week, I saw a video with Michael singing a track cover of If God Was One of Us. And fabulous, isn't it? And I'm always absolutely hugely impressed every time I see anything to do with any of you. And sort of knowing John, your brother, who I sort of see around the local scene doing gigs and stuff, and we always have a laugh and we get on really well. He's so immensely proud of all of you, and it just, he never goes on about it, but he is, and I really sort of love that and admire that. Tell us a little bit about the band, how it's formed. I know it comes from a former band with your dad. Yeah. You just tell us how it evolved, and are there any plans in future to be doing some touring?
Well, of course, it goes back a long way. Really, the band itself, which is called the Mighty Doonans, prior to that was called the Doonan Family Band. So I came back from Liverpool, I think about 1977, something like that. Michael had been in Hedgehog Pie, as a pro musician, and at that time, that band seemed to be, kind of run its time. So myself, Michael, and my dad got together, only for a few months, to do a couple of gigs. Very quickly brought in Jed Grimes and Phil Murray, and we had a couple of fantastic dancers, Julie Johnson and Angela Elliott. Both tip-top dancers at the time. Jed left the band, we brought in Stu Luckley. Angela and Julie had left the band, and we had in, for a time, our niece Sarah from Leeds, and Frances, Michael's daughter. There's lots of these other connections. Sarah, in the meantime, left with Frances as a solo dancer. Michael's other daughter, Rosie, who is now a well-established singer-songwriter in her own right. Phil's son, Ben, who'd been with a pro band for a good while. He's the kind of the walk-on singer-player with the show Warhorse down in London, and of course was on tour. But of course the tour last March was curtailed, once the coronavirus came. Stu's son, Jamie, by this time was playing drums. And we had a kind of talk about it, and we thought that the Doonan Family Band, which was essentially an acoustic band, although it obviously would play through a PA system, but effectively it was an acoustic band. Maybe we could do a wee bit more, but also try to promote really the talents of the younger members of the family, or families, I should say, 3 families. It was one of the first gigs that we did. The guy who was doing the MC for the day, and it was leading up to giving us a big kind of rise for the audience for announcing us to come on. He said, "We've got this new band. It was called the Doonan Family Band. I'm not sure what it's going to be called, but here we are. Let's hear it for the Mighty Doonans." And I think we all off stage said, that's a really good name. So it's stuck ever since from that.
I'll keep tabs on what's happening with the band, and obviously I'll announce any touring or big gigs that are coming up. But is there any chance of giving us a little bit of a blast on the fiddle? It'll be the first musical performance of 2021 on our podcast.
Really? I better get it right. But
No pressure.
These are two reels. And actually, I was reminded that we learnt these. In fact, we kind of play these two reels together, a Sligo, Maid and a high reel. And we play these and learnt them from the 60s, who came to the folk club. There were a trio of sisters called the Graham sisters. One sang, the other played guitar, and Francie Graham played banjo mandolin. So this is it. This is Sligo, Maid and high reel.
That was tremendous. What a great way to start the year. That was interesting when Kevin was talking about growing up as a traditional Irish family in Jarrow and Hebben. How Irish are we all? Well, I've got an expert. Meet Ruairí Cullen from Irish in Britain.
Thanks, Michael. Great to be here.
Given Brexit and everything else that's gone on the last couple of years, it's a lot of people are now sort of panicking about the future. They have worries and concerns. This is aside from coronavirus. And I know a lot of people want to know, how Irish am I, and can I get a passport for Ireland? So what's the criteria for getting a passport?
Well, the criteria for getting a passport is if you were born in Britain, what you need to have is either an Irish-born grandparent. And by Irish-born, I mean someone who's born on the island of Ireland. So that's quite an open way of interpreting it. Or you need an Irish parent, so someone who holds Irish citizenship. Now, you might not immediately be an Irish citizen if you have an Irish grandparent. What you have to do first of all is apply through a process called foreign birth registration. And then once you've got the foreign birth registration, you can then apply to be an Irish citizen by receiving a passport. There's a bit of kind of fiddly rules about if you're relying on the Irish parent. So if you were born abroad to an Irish parent, and abroad is in Britain, if you're born in Britain to an Irish parent who was born in Ireland, you're pretty much automatically eligible for a passport. If you were born in Britain to an Irish parent who wasn't born in Britain, you then have to apply through foreign birth registration. But also that parent needs to have been an Irish citizen when you were born for you able to claim Irish citizenship.
So how difficult is it? You've got to go and get all the evidence for this, for grandparents, birth certificates and things like that?
The foreign birth registry process is it's complex. If you have all the necessary documents, it's not necessarily too difficult. Sometimes it can be quite hard to find grandparents' birth certificates. You might also need marriage certificates, also death certificates. And, you know, we could be talking about someone who was born in 1850 or something, you know. So you can get these. You can apply through a website called www.certificates.ie, and you can put in your parents' and grandparents' details there. So that can be quite difficult. The foreign birth registration can take over 12 months. And at the moment, unfortunately, they've paused the process since December because of COVID restrictions. So, you know, hopefully in the spring that will open again, but the foreign birth registration can take, quite a long time. Passport process is a bit more straightforward. You can apply online, you can put your details online. You do have to send your documentary evidence physically, but that can take as little as 6 weeks. So that's a lot easier and a bit more straightforward. You always have to send off your birth and possibly marriage certificates and also some proof of address. Something that some people find quite difficult is that you have to send off 4 little passport photos. You know, we've all seen them, and you have to get 2 of them signed by a witness. And the list of witnesses can seem slightly arcane, but it's usually kind of professional occupations like a doctor, a nurse, police, a lawyer, but it can't be a relative, and you need a witness to sign 2 of your photos.
It takes a bit of patience and a bit of time. And you've not got to give up at the first hurdle because it's something which is worth achieving. I'm saying that. What does it mean to have your Irish citizenship?
Well, obviously, in the context of Brexit, of the UK leaving the European Union, having an Irish passport gives you visa-free travel rights throughout the European Union and a few other states. So you've got the right to move, travel, live within the European Union. It doesn't change your right as a citizen in Britain because you claim that you're probably already a British citizen. And I think last year, the Irish passport, there was different kind of indexes, but there's one index that puts the Irish passport as the 7th most powerful in the world. There's one that puts it on 3rd most powerful in the terms of giving you visa-free access to different countries. So beyond the European Union, there's lots of other countries. I mean, the UK passport gets you to a lot of countries, but the Irish one gets you to even more since Brexit.
Now, Rory, there's a census coming up in March, and you know, who can sign that as an Irish person? Can I describe myself as Irish, even though I just only have a British passport?
Yes, you can, absolutely. So the census is on the 21st of March this year, so just under 2 months. Fortunately, it's 4 days after St. Patrick's Day, so hopefully it'll be everyone will be feeling particularly Irish around then. So in the England and Wales census, they've actually delayed the census in Scotland until next year. But in the England and Wales census, there's 4 ways in which you can register your Irishness, if you like. So the first way is if you were born in Ireland or Northern Ireland, you can state that. The second way is it asks you what citizenships you hold, and they ask you that through a passport. So you might not be able to, Michael, but for some people who have an Irish passport, you can state that, as well as a British passport. You don't have to. You can put down as many passports as you do hold. The third way is through national identity. The question is, how do you define yourself in terms of nationality? And you can put Irish. You can also put Northern Irish, British, English, but I think you just have to choose one. Then the fourth way is through the question about how you define your ethnic group. So this is very much open to kind of however you want to interpret it, but you do have to just choose one. And in the category, under the white category, there is an option to define yourself as Irish. You can also define yourself as an Irish traveller if you wish. Irish traveller and gypsy is another category. Obviously, you can't just say you were born in Ireland if you weren't, but you might want to do that in terms of national identity and ethnic group in your own case, Michael.
Yes, that's really interesting. I think I will.
Irish in Britain is very keen to encourage people to kind of engage with their Irishness in those ways through the census, because otherwise the community can kind of seem a bit invisible, certainly in terms of 2nd and 3rd generation. If you weren't born in Ireland, but you feel very strongly Irish, the national identity and ethnic group question kind of shows the size of the Irish community beyond the 1st generation people who were born there. So it's great in terms of kind of looking at health data and where Irish people lived and all that sort of stuff.
It's fascinating talking to you. You know, you made it very, very clear and easy to follow. And I know it's quite a complex subject. And I know a lot of people are really interested in what you've just been explaining to us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
Well, that's all we have time for this month. I hope you've enjoyed our podcast. And thanks again to the guests, Kevin Doonan and Ruairí Cullen. We'd like to finish off with a piece of music. This is The Hunch, featuring lead vocals by Michael Doonan. One of Us. Enjoy, and we'll see you next month.
God had a name, what would it be, and would you call it to his face? If you were faced with him and all his glory, what would you ask if you had just one question? And yeah, God is great. Yeah, God is good. Yeah. What if God was one of us? Just a slave like one of us. Just a stranger on a bus, trying to make his way home. If God had a face, what would it look like, and would you like to see? If seeing meant that you would have to believe in things like heaven, and in Jesus and the saints, and all the prophets, and yeah, God is great, and yeah, God is good, and yeah. What if God was one of us? Just a slave like one of us. Just a stranger on a bus, trying to make his way home. He's trying to make his way home. Back up in heaven all alone. Nobody calling on the phone, except for the Pope may be in Rome. fall. Set